Mr. President, I was very happy to hear the description of a possible path forward from the majority handler of floor manager for this bill a few minutes ago. And I welcome that path forward. It's completely consistent with the UC I offered many, many times last week that was unfortunately then rejected, but hopefully it'll be accepted so we can have a productive path forward and have votes on these amendments, on so many amendments that were brought to this bill about energy, on my amendment, on other significant topics. Certainly sounds like the discussion at the majority lunch today was, let's just say, more appropriate and more productive than the discussion last Thursday. So I look forward to that path forward. As we hopefully build on that path forward, let me again explain why I think a clear up or down vote before October 1st on my amendment is really important and why I'm demanding it. It's not of my choosing that this be happening in terms of this illegal OPM rule. It's not of my choosing that create this October 1st deadline, but that's exactly what's happened, which demanded that I act with my amendment language. And again, I'm joined by several colleagues, and I appreciate their partnership and their help. Mr. President, this all began in the Obamacare debate, in our debate and in our legislating on the Obamacare bill. In that process, an amendment was accepted, a Grassley amendment was accepted that said in clear and no uncertain terms that every member of Congress and that all congressional staff would go to the so-called exchanges, no ifs, ands, or buts. And the purpose of that language was crystal clear. The message was whatever the fallback plan for all Americans is, first it was the public option, then it became the exchange, whatever that fallback plan for all Americans is, that's what every member of Congress, that's what congressional staff should go to. No special deal, no special exemption, no special subsidy. That's what we should live by. And I certainly supported that language. It goes to what really is a fundamental rule of democracy. The governors should live by the same rules as the governed across the board. Our founders actually talked about that specifically. James Madison, co-author of the Federalist Papers, wrote Federalist number 57 specifically about this point. And a central theme in that Federalist number 57 was exactly this: what is good for America is good for Washington. The rule for America should certainly be the rule for those who have the particular honor and responsibility to help govern. And that should be the case across the board, certainly including in Obamacare. So that's why that provision got in the law, was passed into law, was signed into law by President Obama. Now, after that, I guess we sort of experienced what Nancy Pelosi described about Obamacare. Well, we had to pass the law to find out what's in it. Because after the law was passed, several folks around here in Capitol Hill in Washington read the law, read that particular provision, and they said, oh, you know what? They said, wait a minute, look at this. And they correctly noted that that clear language demands that all members of Congress, all congressional staff go to the exchange. And clearly, our current subsidy for health care does not follow us there. In fact, there's a specific other section of Obamacare that says quite clearly that when an employee of a business goes to the exchange, that employee's employer contribution for an employer-based health care plan does not follow him or her to the exchange. So again, when a lot of folks around here, after the fact, read what was then the Obamacare law on that point, they really said, oh, you know what? That's when a lot of scurrying started, a lot of gnashing of teeth, a lot of scheming, a lot of discussion, and ultimately a lot of lobbying of the president and the Obama administration. Sadly, it was bipartisan, I believe. A lot of folks pushing to have the Obama administration simply issue a rule, a regulation that fixed all of this. Problem is pretty simple and pretty straightforward and pretty important. You're not supposed to be able to issue a rule or a regulation that's contrary to the statute. And that's what these folks were lobbying for, and sadly, that's what they got. Right as Congress was going into the August recess, safely leaving town, the Obama administration issued this OPM rule that my language is all about. And that rule is flat out, clearly illegal on two grounds. First of all, under this proposed OPM rule, every member of Congress gets to decide for himself or herself what staff members are even covered by the mandate to go to the exchange at all. Now that is just ridiculous and is directly contrary to the clear, unmistakable language in Obamacare. That language says all official staff go to the exchange. And now this illegal OPM rule is going to say, well, it didn't really mean all official staff. It just meant whatever any individual member of Congress decides. That's ridiculous and that's illegal. The second part of the OPM rule is just as illegal, just as ridiculous, just as objectionable. And it says whoever does go to the exchange, members of Congress and whatever staff do go to the exchange, they get to bring along with them their big taxpayer-funded subsidy from their previous federal employee health benefits plan. Well, wait a minute. Obamacare doesn't say that. In fact, there is a separate provision of Obamacare that says the opposite, that says when an employee goes to the exchange from a business, that employee loses his or her employer contribution. Specific part of Obamacare directly contrary to what this illegal OPM rule is trying to do. And so, again, the attempt is simply to rewrite the law by administrative fiat, yet again, to create another exemption from Obamacare, if you will, that is nowhere in the statute. That's wrong, that's illegal, and that demands action. That's why I, with several other members, House and Senate, came up with this language that I am proposing on the floor now as an amendment would stop this illegal OPM rule. It would say exactly what Obamacare says now. Every member of Congress, all of our staff must go to the exchange and operate under the same rules as all other Americans. No special deal, no special exemption, no special subsidy. No other American gets this fat employer subsidy in going to the exchange, nor should we. And that's not in Obamacare, and there's a specific section of Obamacare that in fact says the opposite. And so my language on the floor now would say that and would broaden the rule appropriately to the president, the vice president, and all of their political appointees. The clear intent of this provision in Obamacare from the beginning is that what's good for America has to be good for Washington. Whatever America is dealt, the cards they are dealt, including that fallback plan. Originally, it was proposed as a public option, now the exchanges. That should be what is imposed on Washington. No special plan, no special deal or exemption or subsidy. What is imposed on America needs to be imposed on Washington. That's true under Obamacare. That should be true across the board. Today, just as it was true in the eyes and minds and hearts of the founders. Again, James Madison, Federalist number 57, wrote specifically on this point. This basic first rule of democracy goes back that far. And so that is why I come to the floor and demand a vote. It's an explicit reaction to an illegal rule, a rule issued by the administration beyond the president's authority, with no basis in the Obamacare law. In fact, with provisions of the Obamacare law that are directly contrary to it, and a rule that is set to take effect October 1st. So we must vote now. And that's why, again, to come back full circle to the comments of the distinguished majority floor leader on this bill, I welcome the path forward he was describing. That's exactly the path forward I set out last week in my UC request. So let's vote. Let's do what this institution is supposed to be set up to do. Let's vote on this very important, very timely issue. Let's vote on other amendments on the bill. Let's vote on the bill. Let's move forward in that appropriate and productive way. Thank you, Mr. President. With that, I yield back the floor.